Hi, it's Eva Cartman, and you are listening to the Dream Big Podcast Show, the place to go to learn, laugh, and grow. Today's guest is retired and decorated Navy SEAL Commander Jocko Willink, who's going to teach us the way of the warrior. This episode is 115, Big Dreamers. You know what time it is. It's time to dream big.
Welcome to the Dream Big Podcast Show. We're inspiring you to shoot for the moon, take aim and go. We bring to you amazing guests who truly love what they do. Every day they're living their dreams, and so can you. Dream big, take action to reach your goals. Are you pumped yet? It's showtime, let's rock and roll.
Hi, Big Dreamers. Before I introduce Jocko, I wanted to let you know that you can now get my free Confidence Secrets course, which is over an hour of me teaching you about how to develop your superpower of self-belief. This Confidence Secrets course is going to be part of the Dream Big Academy that we launch next year. But for a limited time, we are offering access to this content for free at dreambigpodcast.com/beta. If you're a younger Big Dreamer listening to this, please ask your parents to help you get it. Again, it's completely free for a limited time, so please take advantage and get the course while you still can at dreambigpodcast.com/beta. Okay, now let's focus on this week's incredible guest. Jocko Willink is a decorated retired Navy SEAL officer. He was a Navy SEAL for 20 years and was the commander of the SEAL Team 3 Task Unit Bruiser, the most highly decorated special operations unit of the Iraq War. Now, Jocko teaches leadership, strategy, tactics, fitness, and jiu-jitsu to people all over the world. He's the author of the best-selling series, The Way of the Warrior Kid, and also now has a top-rated podcast called Way of the Warrior Kid. My parents and I are huge fans of his work and his podcast, and we will include links in our show notes at dreambigpodcast.com/115. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Jocko Willink. Hi, Jocko.
Hello, Eva.
I'm so thrilled to have you on the Dream Big podcast.
Well, thanks for inviting me on.
I'd like to start by asking you where you are from, where you grew up, and why you decided to join the military.
Well, I grew up on the East Coast. That's where I was born and raised, up in New England on a little dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And when I grew up, I always knew that I wanted to join the military. I always wanted to be some kind of a soldier. So when I got done with high school, that's what I did.
First off, on behalf of all our Big Dreamers, I wanted to thank you for your service to our country. We enjoy the freedom and safety here on our homeland because we are protected by the world's greatest military. So thank you for your service.
Well, it was an honor to serve. Thank you, Eva.
As a Navy SEAL and a Navy SEAL officer, I know you experienced the hell of war, and many of your fellow warriors were wounded or killed in combat. And we have a volunteer army here in our country, so all of the remarkable men and women in our armed forces have made a decision to serve their country. And just a few days ago, we celebrated Veterans Day here in the U.S. Why did these heroes choose to risk their lives for our freedom?
I think that in America, I think that the service men and women that decide to join the military realize that there is something bigger than themselves, that there is something more important than themselves, and they decide to step up and defend this beautiful country and the freedom that we have here.
Wow. And last week we had terrible fires here in California. My school was canceled, and many of my closest friends were evacuated, and some of my classmates even lost their homes. So I think it reminded a lot of us that we should not take anything for granted. And also, when you see disasters like this, either man-made like war or natural disasters like fires or earthquakes or hurricanes, it also brings out the best in humanity. The firefighters and the first responders who put their life on the lines to protect strangers' homes, rescue people, and even animals. And I'm sure you see similar acts of heroism on the battlefield, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very similar situation that war is obviously a very horrible thing, and very horrible things happen during war. But you also get to see the side of humanity where you see a soldier or a sailor or an airman or a Marine trying to save their friends' lives, even at the risk of their own safety. And so that is one of the most incredible things to see in war. And as you mentioned, you do see it here in America with our police and firefighters and first responders and paramedics and people that risk their lives to protect us here at home as well.
Wow. And after your service in the military, you have embarked on a new and exciting career as an author, speaker, and podcaster. And you share the principles that you have learned in training as a Navy SEAL commander and in war, and principles that can be applied in everyday life to accomplish your goals and big dreams. And one of the main concepts you talk about is discipline. Can you share how you define discipline and why you think it's such an important skill to develop?
Well, I think discipline is a fairly simple thing to understand. It's doing what you know you are supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. And that sounds pretty easy, but unfortunately, discipline is a pretty hard thing to live every day because, as you can imagine, Eva, there's probably things that you know that you should do every day, but maybe each day you don't feel like doing those things, whether it's eat healthy, whether it's exercise and work out, whether it's study your schoolwork or do your homework at the right time, or do the yard work that you're supposed to do, or clean up your bedroom. There's all these little things that we know that we're supposed to do. We know that they're the right thing to do. And a lot of times people take the easier path. And that's what discipline is, taking the hard path that ends up giving you long-term benefits. Because if you eat healthy, for instance, if you exercise, if you do your homework, if you keep your room clean, your life is going to be a lot more organized and you're going to have a lot more freedom in your life than if you don't do those things because you don't feel like it at that particular moment. So that's what discipline is to me. Discipline is to me is doing the things that you know you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do them.
So what are some ideas for kids? What are some ways kids can start to get discipline? Can it be small things like making your bed or setting a timer for 2 minutes when you brush your teeth?
Yeah, I think those are very good examples of what to do. And I think one of the things that's a good place to start discipline is getting up early in the morning, because I don't know what you're like, Eva. I've never been in your house, but a lot of times kids in the morning, and I have 4 kids myself, and sometimes kids in the morning, they would rather stay in their bed than they would then get up and get their day started. And as you know, if you don't get out of bed on time, then you end up being rushed for school. And when you're rushed for school, you don't get a good breakfast, or you forget your homework, or you leave something at home that you were supposed to bring in. And it's all because you woke up and you rushed around. You definitely don't get any exercise in the morning. Whereas if you wake up just a little bit earlier, you can do some exercise. You can make sure you have all your stuff ready for school. You can make your bed. You can brush your teeth. And all those things are important. So I think a great place to start discipline is just start by getting up a little bit earlier in the morning so you have a more relaxed and more efficient start to your day.
Very true. And I know you're passionate about teaching adults and business leaders about these principles, but you also wrote books for kids, like the Way of the Warrior Kid books and the Warrior Kid podcast, which I have been listening to and love. Why has this become a passion of yours, and why do you think it is never too early to start building discipline?
Well, like I mentioned, Eva, I have 4 kids of my own. Now, the oldest one is 19 years old, and the youngest one is 9 years old, and the other 2 are 17 and 15. So I've been through a lot of stuff with kids, and I really enjoy bringing up kids, and I enjoyed raising my own kids. And as I taught my kids things as they grew up, I thought to myself, it'd be nice if I could pass on these lessons that I learned from the military and from my experiences in the SEAL teams. It'd be nice if I could pass them on in a way that kids could understand them and kids could start to put them into their lives. So that's why I wrote the Warrior Kid books, and that's why I do the Warrior Kid podcast. And I have another kids book coming out called Mikey and the Dragons. And so that's why I did it, just to pass on these lessons that I learned to kids, because it's never too early to start getting on the right path.
Yeah, big dreamers. One of the best lessons I've heard from this podcast is the power of discipline. I'll give you an example. Since we launched back in October 2016, we have published an episode every Monday. We have never missed a Monday. This has required a lot of discipline because there are times where we need to get something done, especially if we need to record something at the last minute when I may not feel like it, but I do it anyway because I know we had made a commitment to our audience to publish every Monday. When I was getting started, I would sometimes complain, but over time, I know that I just have to get it done. So discipline is definitely a skill that you can get better at, right, Jocko?
Yes, that is definitely true. And there's some people that think that even on a daily basis, if you use some discipline, then it fades away. And I actually disagree with it. And there's other doctors and psychologists that agree with me, which is I think if you implement discipline and you make disciplined choices, I think it becomes stronger and you become more disciplined. So yes, I agree with you, Eva. I think the more discipline you put in your life, the easier discipline becomes.
And another one of your core concepts, and also the title of one of your books, is extreme ownership. We listened to your TED Talk where you told the story of a terrible tragedy on the battlefield involving friendly fire. That's when soldiers on the same side, because of miscommunication, end up firing on one another. As a commander, you could have blamed a lot of different people, but you did not point fingers. You took responsibility for what had happened and focused on new policies to prevent a tragedy like that from happening again. How would you describe this idea of extreme ownership to kids? And can you give some examples of how we can apply that principle in our lives?
Yeah, sure. I think that everyone, not just kids, but adults and everyone should try and pay attention to that idea of extreme ownership. And what it means is instead of blaming other people, and even instead of blaming other things, we take ownership of the problem ourselves, and that means we will try and fix the problems. And where it's a problem in people's lives is, Eva, if you've got a problem in your life, if you didn't get a good grade on a test, let's say you didn't get a good grade on a math test, and you say, well, the teacher didn't explain it well, or the homework didn't cover what was on the test, or I didn't have enough time to take the test. All those things, if you blame another person or another thing, then that means you don't feel like you need to do anything to change the situation. Where if you say, you know what, I didn't do good on that math test, so that's not the teacher's fault. I need to ask better questions of the teacher if I don't understand. I need to study more so that I have enough time to get it finished because I can work quickly. And I need to make sure that the homework covers what was covered in class and ask the teacher if there's anything that will be on the test that's not in the homework. And if you do that, well, guess what? You are going to do really well on your next math test. And so the difference is if you blame other people or other things, you never fix the problems. Whereas if you take extreme ownership of problems when they happen, you will actually fix those problems.
That's very true. And in a recent episode, we talked about how to say you are sorry when you mess up. And part of the advice that I gave is that when you are apologizing, you do not point fingers at the other side, even if you believe that they are partially at fault. And also, as part of a sincere apology, you can look forward to the future and explain what you are going to do in the future to make sure that you don't find yourself apologizing for the same thing a few weeks later. I felt like that has a similar feel to our concept of extreme ownership, right?
Yes, it definitely does. And one of the best things you can do when you do make a mistake is you actually do apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry, this was my fault, and here's what I'm going to do to fix it.
True. And as we're going our research, you often described as the scariest Navy SEAL ever. But I've got to say, I can tell you're a super nice guy. Can you share something that people may not know about your softer, more sensitive side?
Well, I'm actually technically not allowed to expose or disclose my softer or sensitive side, Eva, because that would ruin my reputation. Don't worry, I'm just kidding. Well, no, I've already talked about it. I mean, I'm a dad. I have 4 kids. And I'll tell you another thing that's a lot of people might not understand is even when you're in the SEAL teams or you're in the military, that doesn't mean that you don't care about your people. In fact, the best leaders are the leaders that truly care about their people and they try and take care of them. So that's definitely, believe me, when I was in combat and when I was in the SEAL teams, I love my guys more than anything, and I did everything I could to take care of them.
That's an important lesson, Big Dreamers. Never judge a book by its cover.
That is always a good fundamental lesson for everyone to follow.
Yeah, and I have a couple of final questions. If you go back in time and talk to your 10-year-old self, what would be the best advice?
The best advice that I could give is the same mantra that I say all the time, and that is discipline equals freedom. And we talked about it already today, but the basic principle is the more discipline you put in your life, the more organized you are, the harder you work, the more freedom you're going to have in the end. And I think another thing that kids can do that would be helpful to them is a lot of times kids don't realize that what you're doing right now has a big effect on what happens in the future. So sometimes kids don't realize, if I don't do that well in school or if I don't pay attention to what's happening, it'll be okay because I'll be a grown-up one day and it won't matter. But that's actually not true. What you do today matters, so pay attention and do your best in everything that you do every single day.
Yeah, and what trait do you have that has enabled you to take your big dreams and make them a reality?
I think the most important trait that people can have is being humble, is just making sure that you never think, I know everything, or I'm the best there is, or no one can do this better than me. I'm always thinking to myself, hey, I need to work harder. I need to make sure that I'm doing this correctly. I need to double check on the work that I've done to make sure that I've done everything I can to make it as good as it can be. And I think that when people lose their humility, they start making mistakes because they already think they know everything and they already think they're the best and they stop working as hard.
That's amazing. I have 2 more questions. When you have doubted yourself in the past, what made you overcome those fears and continue to pursue your dream?
Yeah, I think everyone's going to have doubts. And when there's times that I doubt or I'm afraid of something, what I always try and do is instead of shy away from the thing that I'm afraid of, is I try and stand up and face it. And I try and move toward it. And I think a lot of times in that people, what they're really afraid of isn't as bad as they think it's going to be. And that's one of the themes in my newest book, Mikey and the Dragons, is there's a little prince that has to go and fight these dragons and he's really scared of them. And what he needs to do is just, instead of hiding from them, stand up and face them. And that makes a big difference. And so when I'm afraid of something, I stand up and face it and attack it.
Wow. Okay, I have one last question. Where can our audience find out more about you?
Well, you can get the kids' books that I have. The Warrior Kid books are on warriorkid.com. Mikey and the Dragons is available on Amazon right now, and it will be in other bookstores later, but right now it's available on Amazon. And I have the Warrior Kid podcast, which you can listen to anywhere that you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or whatever podcast platform you use. You can just look up the Warrior Kid podcast and you will find it and you can get that and it's free.
Okay, thank you for being on the show.
No problem, Eva. Thanks for having me on, and I hope you stay safe up there with the fires.
Thank you. Bye. That was so much fun. Thank you, Jocko, for coming on the show. And Big Dreamers, be sure to check out Jocko's Way of the Warrior Kid book series, and of course, his Way of the Warrior Kid podcast. For the parents out there, Jocko also has a popular podcast for adults called the Jocko Podcast that you should check out. All the links are in our show notes at dreambigpodcast.com/115. Did you enjoy this special episode? If so, please tell your friends and family about the Dream Big podcast. If everyone listening can just tell one person about this episode, that would lead to a chain reaction that would get the Dream Big podcast in front of so many new people, which would be amazing. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you can get notified whenever we release a new episode. Finally, if you're interested in being part of the Dream Big Academy, please go to dreambigpodcast.com/beta. And right now, we are giving away the Confidence Secrets course for free. Have your parents go to dreambigpodcast.com/beta to to get the free course that includes over 1 hour of me teaching you how to become more confident, which is the key to achieving your big dreams. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Eva Cartman reminding you that you have unlimited potential. Your dreams are not optional, you need to make them essential. So take massive action to turn those big dreams into reality. Live with passion, the way life is meant to be. I'll see you next episode. Bye.